Welcome back. This is the second of my proposed 5 shows dealing with Les Misérables by Victor Hugo, which I am presently reading. I recorded this months ago as part of a weekly reading report, but I realized I'm not doing weekly reading reports, and I'd rather bundle it into an All Les Misérables series so people can go back and find it. So this second part will cover the section called Cosette. As you can see, there are specific sections in this book. There are 5 of them, and the second one is called Cosette. And so what I'm talking about here in this part is mostly from that section. So it's kind of one-to-one. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks. So I'm continuing on with Victor Hugo's Les Misérables. I've upped my game, and I got this beautiful Penguin cloth-bound hardcover volume. I was reading the Penguin mass market paperback last time, Norman Denny translation, and they have the Norman Denny translation in this volume, which is beautiful. There is another volume which, should I strike it rich someday, I think either Easton Press puts it out, which is like a full, so this is a little bit on the smaller size, but Easton Press has done one, like a full-size Norman Denny translation that's got illustrations, like a $250 volume. Like, it is beautiful. That will be, if I want to add to my collection someday. But I really love this. It's really wonderful, and it's almost the same page count. I think they basically took the Penguin version and just threw some nice cloth bound. But it is nice cloth bound. It's got the little marker here, which I love. So very much enjoying reading it out of this one. I upped my game. So it's been interesting. I'm progressing through. I think I'm up. Where am I now? I'm at page 419 at the moment of 1200 and let's see, 1232. So I'm not even halfway there at page 492. It is quite a mammoth, but I'm taking my time and I'm enjoying it. And a couple of things have popped this week as I'm reading it. And I think one of them was really I think I talked about this last time, but the difference, I feel like him and Tolstoy, I'm very much comparing Hugo to Tolstoy and to Dickens. For whatever reason, they were all writing around the same time period. They were all writing monster books, and they share a lot of traits. Dickens and Tolstoy, not so much, but Hugo and Tolstoy, yes, and Hugo and Dickens, yes. So it's really fascinating to me because I feel like Hugo is sort of like Tolstoy and Dickens together, and his flaws are starting to come out a little bit more now. Like, he is the king of melodrama. So there's a scene in this, and I'm probably going to spoil this. I mean, this is an old story. Hopefully I won't spoil the ending as I get further down, but there's something that I just read, a sequence that I just read that I thought about. I would never, this might be in Dickens, but it would never be in Tolstoy. So Cosette is kind of a prisoner with the Thénardier family, right? She was left there by Fantine, who in the earlier part of the book kind of blew through town, kind of gave her kid to the Thénardier family because she was broke, and then moved to the town where Valjean was to work and make money, sent money back to these horrible people who just were lying to her about, oh, she needs this, she needs that. And, she's really like Cinderella, like the other 2 sisters, the other 2 girls in the household are like, they get everything and she gets nothing. So through the machinations of the novel, Valjean ends up back there, and he's finally come for Cosette. He's like, he's gonna rescue her, right? He's gonna get her out of there. And man, Hugo drags it out. Valjean shows up and he stays at the Thénardiers for the night, and he's watching everybody, and he's watching Cosette being, manhandled and treated terribly. And man, Hugo draws it out chapter after chapter, where another chapter comes and you think that Valjean is going to finally take her away. No, he watches and she gets treated poorly. Then he makes an offer. He finally takes her away. But then one of the people are like, we could have gotten more money for them. And they go after them. Like, oh my God, it is such a soap opera. And I think to myself, Tolstoy these are the things that Tolstoy does not stoop to. Like, he does not do soap opera. He may do coincidence every now and again, but he doesn't do soap opera. So there's definitely that. Hugo is, his Achilles heel is definitely, man, he can use soap in a really intense way. And I just finished a section 2 where the coincidence, he also uses coincidence in a way that's really not great. There's a point where Valjean and Cosette end up, they're on the run now. Javert has gotten wind of them, and they're on the run. They're in Paris. And in the middle of the night, Valjean stumbles into this little melon patch. And who happens to be there is the guy who he rescued, pages back from being crushed by a cart. And I just thought, oh my God. So just very, very soapy. And I thought, he didn't have to do that. In a way, you could have put it in his head that, like, he knew where that guy lived. He had a notion that when that guy moved to Paris, he was going to be in this area, so he was going to go look for him. And it would have been fine. There was enough drama of him being chased by, Javert. But Hugo, he just can't resist. He's like, oh, let's do this surprise, coincidence that happens and delight the reader. So I am definitely noticing his flaws a little bit more as I go on. But he's still a delight to read. I'm still enjoying the fact that he can meander. He's now that we're in Paris, he's describing page after page, chapter after chapter, very specific walls and buildings, and saying, well, it doesn't look like this anymore. Even in his day, something had happened where they had changed Paris and knocked down a bunch of buildings. So he's just spending all this time. But he's a great writer, so you don't mind spending time with him as he does this. So that's interesting. And I'm very interested in kind of the character as fate, because Javert and Valjean are really these two arrows kind of pointing at each other as they're heading down the book. And it's making me realize that the way Hugo writes is that character really is fate in a sense. And I don't know how the story ends, because although I've seen the musical, I don't remember exactly how it ended. So I don't really know how this ends up. But Valjean has this character flaw which really drives the story. Again, it's very fascinating as someone who's trying to write stories himself, that Valjean has this thing where, he in a moment of weakness, he stole a loaf of bread, and so he gets he goes to jail. He gets out of jail, and then he steals silver from this bishop. They find out about it. Then he steals a penny or a coin from this kid on the road, and the authorities find out, which is kind of ridiculous. But so he keeps screwing up, and Javert is there when he finally. And then there's this incredibly melodramatic moment where they find someone who looks like him, and they think, they think that he's gonna go to jail, and of course Valjean. I won't spoil that, but Valjean ends up in prison again, and he gets out. But so he's now escaped. Now he's an escaped convict. So whatever good he does, there's an enormous amount of good he does when he gets out of jail the first time. When he gets all this money, he goes and he becomes a mayor of this town, and he becomes rich. But he really puts money back into the town and really takes care of the town people. And he's a force for good. He creates a lot of good in the world. But his character flaws are always 2 steps behind him. So it's interesting how his fate, no matter where he goes, it seems, no matter how he tries to do good and set himself up as a do-gooder, his past always catches up to him. And I'm curious to see how it plays out, as the novel continues to go. And on the other hand, you have Javert, who, in a sense, is a more moral character than Valjean. But his morals are so rigid. It's crazy how, rigid Javert is, where Javert at one point thought he recognized Valjean as an escaped convict, and he kind of reported him to the authorities. And then when this lookalike was kind of captured, he then goes to Valjean, and he's the cop in Valjean's town. He goes to Valjean and says, "You must fire me, sir. You must denounce me and fire me, blah, 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 blah." And Valjean's like, "Look, I'm not going to do that. That's ridiculous. You made a mistake." But Javert won't have it. He's sort of his whole being is the law, the absolute law, the absolute. So he then he reports Valjean because Valjean didn't report him. But in a weird way, Javert is the more moral character. It's just his morality is based on a very flawed system of laws, which is very unjust. So it's cool. It's got, and Javert's character, I'm going to probably get more of it as we go, but he's very much he must capture Valjean because it's his, he was lied to, he was fooled. And it's like his whole persona now is like, I've got to capture this guy. So very elemental forces at work in this book, which are propelling things forward. And of course, because Hugo's taking a sweet ass time, it's not being propelled forward by any means. It's like slowly moving forward. But it is interesting how each of these characters, their flaws and their very character is kind of pointing towards their ultimate fates, what that might be. So really interesting stuff. So I wanted to read this one quote from Les Mis before I move on to talk about Ayn Rand, who I also have been reading this week. And it's a beautiful, every once in a while I just come across these paragraphs where he throws down as a writer, like as good as anybody can do. And so he's just talking about darkness. He's just talking about being in the dark. I think Cosette was out at night, having to get water in the stream, this horrible, cruel thing. And there's just this description, just because he's like, I'm Hugo, and I'm gonna throw down about what darkness is. But it's a beautiful paragraph. So, quote, "Darkness afflicts the soul. Mankind needs a light. To be cut off from the day is to know a shrinking of the heart. Where the eye sees darkness, the spirit sees dismay. Even for the strongest, there is apprehension in an eclipse, in the dead of night, in the blackness of a thunderclap. No man walks alone through the nighttime forest without a tremor. Shadows and trees form two awe-inspiring layers in which a chimerical reality resides. The inconceivable appears with a special clarity, almost at arm's length, and we see, floating in space or in our own mind, things as vague and intangible as the dreams of sleeping flowers. Wild shapes haunt the distance. The air we breathe is a black emptiness. We want to look back and are afraid. The hollows of night, all things grown stark, silent forms that vanish as we approach, the hint of unseen presences in the immensity of a tomb-like silence. Tree trunks and overhanging branches and tall, quivering grass. Against all this, we have no defense. No man is so bold that he does not tremble and feel close to panic. There is something ugly at work, as though the very soul were becoming merged in darkness. And all this is inexpressibly terrible to a child. The dark forest is an apocalypse, and the small wings of a child's soul flutter in anguish beneath its overhanging boughs." Boom! Mic drop. Hugo. Darkness. Thank you very much. So one last quote from this section. There is a long paragraph, or there's a very long section on a convent called the Petit Picus. And it's a classic Hugo digression. We spend 50, 60 pages about the nature of convents and about what they're like. And it has like a very tangential part of the story where Valjean basically, interacts with some people in this convent briefly before moving right the hell on. So it's a classic Hugo. But there's a beautiful passage I wanted to read where he's kind of comparing convents to prisons in some ways. So it's a really beautiful section. So I wanted to read it to you. Quote, "Those others had been men, these were women." And so he's meaning the prisoners versus these nuns in the convent. "The men had been criminals, thieves and murderers, bandits, fire raisers, parricides. And what crime had these women committed? They had committed none. On the one side, outrage, sacrilege, violence, all the forms that evil can take. On the other side, perfect innocence, almost risen above the world in a mysterious assumption, holding to earth only through virtue and holding to heaven through sanctity. On one side, the whispered avowal of crimes committed. On the other side, the open confession of faults, and such crimes. On the one side, a stench, and on the other, an ineffable perfume. On the one side, a moral distemper, kept out of sight and isolated under the law, which slowly destroyed its victims. On the other side, a chaste seclusion of souls inhabiting the same dwelling. There, under darkness, and here shadow, but a shadow filled with light, a light filled with radiance. Two places of slavery, but in the first a possible end, the legal limit of the sentence, the hope of escape. In the second, perpetuity, with no other aspiration than, in the distant future, that light of liberty that men call death. In the first, only chains of metal. In the second, the chains of faith. And what came out of these places? From the first, a vast malediction, a gnashing of teeth in hatred, the evil of despair, a rage against all humankind, and a mockery of heaven. From the second, blessedness and love. Yet in both places, so alike and unalike, two sets of utterly different beings were accomplishing the same task, a work of expiation. So that ends my quote for the second section of this book, simply titled Cosette. Stay tuned. Soon I will be dropping the third section entitled Marius. Thanks for watching.